Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking something pretty wild. How humanity completely shifted from lugging around heavy chunks of metal to trusting completely invisible financial networks. It's honestly a fascinating story. It's full of ingenuity, a ton of risk, and basically a massive fundamental shift in human trust.
So, let's just dive right into it. How exactly did we go from hauling heavy chests of gold across continents to putting all our faith in pieces of tree bark? It's super easy to take the cash in our wallets, or, those digital numbers in our bank accounts, completely for granted today. But let me tell you, the transition from precious metals to paper was anything but guaranteed.
All right, Section 1, the burden of metal. We're going to look at the very heavy reality of early commerce. To really get this, we have to start by understanding the grueling physical reality merchants faced before paper money even existed. Now, metallic currency, coins, they were a huge technological advance back in the day, but gold and silver, they are incredibly heavy. Imagine you're a merchant trying to conduct any sort of large-scale trade. You would literally have to transport giant chests of coins. And right away, you're exposing yourself to bandits, to shipwrecks, and honestly just the sheer back-breaking difficulty of moving metal over long distances. But the thing is, commerce desperately needed to scale. It needed safe, long-distance transport and a money supply that could actually expand. So while gold and silver were universally valuable, they were practically paralyzing for merchants trying to grow their businesses.
Moving on to Section 2, China invents paper money. This gave them nearly a 1,000-year head start on the rest of the world.
It's absolutely fascinating to track this evolution. It starts all the way back in the 7th century during the Tang Dynasty. Chinese traders had the exact same bandit problem we just talked about, so they came up with a private life hack they called flying money. A trader would deposit their heavy coins with a trusted agent in one city, get a paper certificate, and then redeem that paper for coins in a completely different city. Pretty smart, right? But then, fast forward to the 10th century, and the Song dynasty actually transforms this private merchant practice into the world's first official paper currency, known as the jiaozi. They printed these on mulberry bark paper with really intricate multicolored designs to stop counterfeiters. Suddenly, these were government obligations circulating as everyday currency. Trust was officially shifting from individual merchants to the authority of the state.
And by the 13th century, the Mongol Empire under Kublai Khan carried this idea to its absolute extreme. Just imagine being Marco Polo, visiting from Europe and writing about how the Great Khan was literally turning tree bark into money, and people were accepting it just like gold. He was in complete shock. He was witnessing the ultimate abstraction of wealth. The Mongols made this paper money compulsory, and get this, it had zero convertibility into precious metal. No coin reserves backing it up at all. Its value came entirely from a government decree and public acceptance. Pure social convention completely replaced intrinsic physical value.
But as you might guess, that pure reliance on trust was also its fatal flaw. By the year 1450, the Ming dynasty actually had to abandon paper currency entirely. Why? Well, without the strict discipline of actually having to back it up with metal, Chinese governments repeatedly gave in to the temptation to just print more money whenever they had a fiscal problem. And obviously, this unbacked currency completely diluted the value of the money that was already in circulation. Prices skyrocketed, public confidence totally eroded, and after centuries of these inflationary nightmares, they were forced to completely retreat back to silver and copper coins. It's a pretty powerful cautionary tale.
So let's jump over to Section 3, the European goldsmith bankers. We're talking safe vaults and clever loopholes.
Meanwhile, over in Europe, paper money actually didn't come from a government decree. It stumbled into existence through goldsmiths. Wealthy medieval merchants needed a way to protect their gold from theft, and goldsmiths already had the heavy, secure vaults, so they started offering safekeeping services. You'd drop off your gold, and they'd give you a handwritten receipt. But pretty quickly, merchants realized something. Why bother trekking back to the vault to get the physical gold just to physically hand it to someone else to pay a debt? Instead, they just started endorsing those paper receipts over to their creditors. The paper receipt itself became a bearer instrument, meaning whoever physically held the paper had the right to claim the gold. So the paper itself, not the metal locked in the vault, became the actual medium of exchange.
And then, the goldsmiths noticed a brilliant, if slightly risky little loophole. They observed that on any given day, only a tiny fraction of people actually showed up to claim their physical gold. So they thought, why not quietly issue more receipts than the actual gold we have sitting in the vault and lend those excess receipts out to borrowers to earn interest? And boom, just like that, fractional reserve banking was born.
Think about the sheer risk and reward of the setup for a second. The exact same pile of physical gold was now technically backing multiple circulating receipts.
By lending out, let's say 90% in excess receipts while keeping just 10% of the gold in reserve for day-to-day withdrawals, they were quite literally multiplying the money supply and earning interest on it. But there is a massive catch, the ever-present fatal threat of a bank run. If too many people holding those receipts got spooked and demanded their gold all at the exact same time, the goldsmith wouldn't have enough to pay them. The whole institution would collapse. Yet the economic boost from creating this new credit was just too irresistible, and the system spread like wildfire across Europe.
Which brings us to Section 4, Trading Without Moving Gold. This is the true birth of international credit.
To make this all work, especially over long distances, European merchants created incredibly sophisticated credit instruments. One of the big ones was the promissory note. Basically, if immediate cash settlement wasn't practical, you could accept a written promise from a trusted partner to pay a specific amount at a future date. You could hold on to it, or even sell it to a third party at a discount. It formed the actual infrastructure of the commercial revolution.
And this ingenuity really peaked with the absolute genius of the bill of exchange. Let's play out a scenario to see how this worked for international commerce. Say a merchant down in Florence wants to buy goods from up in London. Instead of shipping a literal chest of gold across a dangerous continent, step 1, he just buys a bill from his local banker in Florence. Step 2, that piece of paper travels to London. Step 3, the English supplier takes that bill to the Florence banker's correspondent bank in London. And step 4, the supplier gets paid out locally by the London banker. The two bankers simply hold claims against each other and settle their debts later on. Notice what happened there. The goods successfully move all the way across Europe, but the physical gold never once has to leave the banker's vaults. It entirely eliminated the risk of transport.
Now, over the centuries, these private, clever merchant tricks were formalized by major institutions. In 1661, you have the Stockholm Banco in Sweden issuing the very first printed European banknotes. Then, in 1694, the Bank of England is founded specifically to finance King William's wars, and they start issuing handwritten promises to pay on demand, which gradually evolve into standardized printed currency. And in the 18th century, Scottish banks were actually legally allowed to compete with each other to issue notes, which drove massive innovations in design and anti-counterfeiting security. So it started as exceptional, handwritten promises, officially became the standardized, printed currency of a global commercial revolution.
All right, final section. Number 5, the power and peril. Let's look at exactly why paper ultimately won. Ultimately, paper didn't just win because it solved the physical problem of lugging around heavy gold. It won because it unlocked the exact expandable liquidity necessary for unprecedented economic growth. Portability meant a pocket-sized wallet could literally replace a heavy treasure chest. Flexibility meant you could print any denomination size, making tiny retail purchases just as easy as massive commercial settlements. But arguably most importantly, expandability. See, gold and silver supplies are finite. If you rely on metal, your economy can only grow as fast as you can dig that metal out of the ground. That restricts commerce and causes deflation. Paper money, on the other hand, could expand to meet the needs of a growing economy. Plus, because it was born directly out of banking activities, it had this perfect, natural synergy with credit creation.
But as we've seen from the Chinese dynasties all the way to European banks, this entire shift was a massive trade-off. Sure, we unlocked tremendous economic potential in global trade, but we simply swapped out the physical risks, the bandits and shipwrecks, for institutional risks. We're talking counterfeiting, devastating inflation from over-issuing currency, and a total, almost terrifying reliance on institutional frameworks. Trust was no longer anchored in the intrinsic value of a precious metal. It was placed entirely in human institutions. And history shows us, when those institutions failed, the currency failed right along with them.
So, the history of paper money is really a story of this profound ongoing tension between abstraction and trust. And I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to explore on your own. Does understanding the fragile, literal, paper-thin history of our financial system change how you view the cash in your wallet right now? It's definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the everyday things around you, and I will see you next time.